Hey guys, today's September 14th, and we're going to be going over domain and range, discrete. So domain stands for your X values. So in here, I'm going to put my domain are my X values. It's also known as the input, and it is also known as what we call independent. We're going to be going over independent more another day, actually later this week. But those are other words for domain. Range are your Y values. So if your input is your domain, your range has to be your output. And if domain is independent, your range has to be what we call dependent. Now we're going to go over what discrete means. Discrete is hard, round, concrete numbers that are determined by counting. What that means is they're an exact value. For example, if I were counting people are discrete. I either have 5, 10, 13 people. I can't say that I have 1.2573 something that just keeps going of a person. You either have 1, 2, 3, so on. Okay. You cannot have a different number other than those. They're numbers that are countable, that are certain values. Okay. So our first example that we have here is asking us to list out the domain and list out the range. So we're going to first start with domain. Since domain are my X values, we're going to go ahead and type in here the X values that are given. Now, when you type your X values or your Y values for that matter, they need to be, they need to be in order from least to greatest. So smallest to biggest. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put brackets. And inside those brackets, I have to figure out what is the smallest X value I have. That would be -1. The next smallest value would be 2, 3, and then 6. If you're wondering where I'm getting these numbers from, I am looking at my X values. So my X's are the first numbers, 2, 3, 6, and -1. Those are my X values for my domain. So all I did was I put them in order from smallest to biggest. Now you always put them in order least to greatest and you don't repeat. So if I had the number more than once, I would only type it in one time. So my range are the Y values. So I use brackets again. And this time I'm looking at the second number, the Y's. I want to put them in order from smallest to biggest. 3, 4, 5. I do not put another 5. I already put the 5. You don't need to put it in over and over and over. Last, is this a function? In order to be a function, we learned that the X's all have to be different. Are all of my X values different? Yes. So yes, this is a function, or you could type in a function. Example 2. State the domain and the range and determine whether the relation is a function. Again, I put my brackets. I am looking at the first numbers, and I have to type them in from smallest to biggest. So I have a -4, a -2, a 1, and a 2. There's 2 1s, but again, I only typed it in one time. Next, my Y values from smallest to biggest. 5, 6, 8, and 9. Lastly, I have to determine, is it a function? Are all of my X values different? Are they all different? No. Because you'll notice that that 1 repeated, so it's not a function. Oh, and I'm just seeing that I missed a Y value. There's a -3 here, so I'm going to go back and input that -3 into my list. So now I have all of my domain and my range listed out. Page 2. We are continuing with what we just did, and my goal is to figure out on example 3 the domain and the range. And again, we list them in order, least to greatest, and we don't repeat. So starting with our ordered pairs. Ordered pairs are a list of your numbers. So when I list my numbers, I still have to use my brackets. to show that I am inputting my values. So again, there's the brackets. Inside the brackets, I can go ahead and list my ordered pairs. So first I have 2, 0. 2 is pointing to 0, but 2 is also pointing to 12. So 2, 12. Then I have a point at 1, 5. Now, when you list your ordered pairs, they do not need to be in any specific order. They only need to be in order when you're listing out the domain and the range. Okay, so I have my ordered pairs listed out right here, 2, 0, 2, 12, 1, 5, 0, 0. But domain, those are the X values or the inputs in order from least to greatest. So I could just look at my mapping and see easily right here that my X's or my domain is 0, 1, 2. Now the range. The range are the Y values, least to greatest, 0, 5, 12. Again, we don't repeat any values if they repeat. Is it a function? No, this is not a function because if you look at the X's, there's 2 2s that repeated, so it makes it not a function. Example 4, given the domain of a function, find the range. This one's a little bit different. We're going to actually have to work this one out because they are telling you that your domain, your X is 1, your X is 2, and your X is 3. What would you get for the range? So what that means is I have to work out 2x minus 2. So if the X was 1, all I'm doing is inputting my first one. If I input a 1, what would I get for my Y value? Well, 2 times 1 is 2, minus 2 would give me 0. So my first value would be 0. Next, I have to figure out what would happen if I input a 2 into the problem. So I used a different color to show that I rewrote the problem 2x minus 2. And this time, instead of x, I'm inputting a 2. Let's see what happens. So 2 times 2, that's 4, minus 2, I would get 2. Okay, now the last one. The last one says for you to input a 3. So let's do that for the last one, 2x minus 2. Instead of x, we have to input a 3 to figure out what I would get. 2 times 3 is 6, minus 2, that's 4. So here are my range values. We worked it out from the problem to figure out what y values we would be given. So our range from least to greatest would be 0, 2, and 4. Example 5. For example 5, it says, given the range of a function, find the domain. This time it's the opposite. They're giving you the y value. They're telling you what it's equal to. They're telling you the output. You have to find the input. So let's go ahead and work out the first one. So given that the output is -2, because remember range stands for output, it equals -2. Here's the problem, -3x plus 2. I have to find this right here, the input. So in order to figure that out, I have to solve the equation. So by doing the opposite of +2, I have to do -2. This goes back to solving an equation. So -2 and -2, -4, and then I divide by -3. So that's going to give me x equals 4/3. Or you could say 1 1/3 or 1.3 repeating. Okay, so that is the first input. If you input 1 1/3, your output is going to be -2. Okay, let's work the next problem. What if my output was 1? If my output is 1, that means that it has to equal 1, and I'm going to use -3x plus 2. That's the equation. So take away 2, that's -1 equals -3x. Divide by -3. So x equals 3. Okay, there's my next input, was 3. Lastly, I have to figure out if my output was 4. I'm going to work it over here. So 4 is equal to -3x plus 2. I have to find the input. So the opposite of +2 is take away 2. So that's 2 equals negative 3x, divide by negative 3, divide by negative 3. So x equals negative 2/3. Okay, now we just have to list them in order from smallest to biggest. So the smallest value would be the negative, which is negative 2/3. So over here, I'm going to put my negative 2/3, comma. My next value would be 1 1/3, 1 1/3, and then next I got 3. Now, if you would like to use your Hypatia tool to insert those differently, you can. It's up to you. Again, remember your notes are yours. So you can type, you can add a text box if you would like. You can do whichever you prefer, or you could write it down on a sheet of paper and just type in your notes as you go. Okay, you guys are going to be working out domain and range today, practicing with listing them from least to greatest, making sure not to repeat your values, and determining if it's a function or not. Have a great day.